Welcome to Sharing My Truth with Mel and Susie, the uncensored version, where we bear it all.
We do.
And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sharing My Truth Pod. You're here with Mel and Susie. And here's a friendly, quick reminder to subscribe to this podcast, wherever you're listening to it, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or any other fun little place to go. Hit that little bell button, and you can hear from us all the time. You can also go to our socials at Sharing My Truth Pod. And you can DM us, look at our little reels and our TikToks. We are hilarious. And you can also go to our YouTubes where you could actually watch our podcasts. We put them out every week. You can go to our website as well. This is a lot of information. I hope you're writing it down. Website is sharingmytruth.com. You can mail us, email us, voicemail us about your truths. Yes. Hello, baby.
Hello, darling.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Guys, we just had an amazing little podcast with an adorable man. A man. We had a man.
It's very exciting. We interviewed a man for everyone who's been complaining about the fact that we haven't interviewed a man.
Trust me, we've
It's
tried.
quite difficult.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was very nice.
It's
Medical
extremely-
doctor.
Medical doctor, but in the realm of anti-aging,
Yeah.
but medically, not like Botox, not like
Yeah.
supplements, but like the literal science of longevity and hormonal health and all of these things to actually make you live a not only longer, but a better life, the quality of life. And he's a literal expert on this. And it was just such an amazing conversation to have with him.
Yeah, and they tailor the care to you. So it might be supplements or whatever, but they're very like high quality. Like they know exactly what they've done all the tests of what your body needs to eat, take, blah, blah, blah.
It's amazing.
To function optimally. And one of the things we talked to him a lot about was sexual health, the importance of that generically on your health, on your mental health, on all sorts of things. And when those pieces start to go wrong, particularly with age where something's not functioning, he called it the mechanics. I think that's very true. If the mechanics are not there, we tend to shy away and just shut down. And of course, that has a lot of effects on yourself, on your relationships, on the way you go into the world, and so we talked a lot about that, which I think was very good for men and for women.
Yeah, I love that we were able to have an actual man who obviously has, experience with being a man and is able to speak with not only personal experience, but, he comes from a place of just like knowing these things are problems and knowing what the solutions are. And it's interesting for us because we have no real idea of like how men work and like what makes them tick, and especially with their testosterone and what happens after 50. Like we can understand sort of what happens to women, with menopause and all this, but there's no real like ticking time thing with men, right? It's just like the possibility of someday they get ED and like why does that happen?
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting conversation. And men who are having problems, like don't be embarrassed by this stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many solutions out there if you can find someone like Dr. Jonathan Bastian. He's not French, but
very good.
I felt like to be French there.
But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely it. That lots of people have issues of all different kinds. They're all individual, and men aren't particularly good at going to the doctor or admitting that something wrong because they think they failed. That is not true. We all have issues, and if you can go and fix the issues, why not go and do that?
Also, longevity is like the sexiest thing right now.
It is very sexy.
It's like the
Sexy
sexiest
state.
thing to like go into,
Yeah.
and you can do like your ice baths and all of your like cool things that you do, and then you go get like PRP, and then it's like really sick.
Thanks, Susie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I think that's like very important.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. And
Sorry, it's been a long night, and we are so excited for you guys to hear this episode.
yeah.
And
Now.
hello, everyone,
Now.
and welcome back to Sharing My Truth Pod. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us today. You guys were so excited to have a man on the podcast. Can we believe it?
Yeah, I'm very
Hello.
happy here. Hi. Hi.
I know this is a lot of estrogen. It's a little bit of testosterone. We're very happy to see it. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. This is very exciting.
Oh no, it's our pleasure. Trust us.
It really is.
We just want to start off every episode by giving you the ability to maybe just say where people can find you, who you are, introduce yourself, and what you do best.
Cool. So I'm the medical director of a clinic called Aeon Future Health. And so we spend a lot of time looking at sort of an integrative approach to health optimization. So really, when you think about overall health, and you think of sort of the classic conventional care model, we try and, as opposed to being really reactive in our care, we try and be really proactive. And I think, our clinic here and our ethos is really good at that. And the way that you do that is with like a very integrated approach to health. So that's kind of the platform, and that's what we're offering. Yeah.
I love that. The fact that you said proactive instead of reactive. I think a lot of people, like myself included, we go to the doctor when there's something wrong, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you are trying to change that.
Yeah. It's a slow grind, but we're getting there for sure. Yeah.
Something that we found really incredible about your clinic and what you deal with on the day-to-day basis, and what you're saying now, longevity, metabolic health. Like, I know obviously probably many people have different definitions of longevity. What does it mean for most of the clients coming in to see you? Like, how are people being like, oh, I want to live longer? Is that it? Or I want to live a better life? Or what is the main reason that they're coming in?
Yeah, listen, I think like when people hear longevity medicine, it gets very blurry and in the distant, right? You're trying to think about things and how they're responding to things in the future. But really, it's our focus is on health span. We want you to be, set yourself up for success, to live your best, healthiest life today, because that sets the platform for how you age. It sets the platform for how you live when you're 50, which sets the platform for how you live when you're 60 and 70 and 80. It probably is a nice byproduct that you might live longer, but really we want you to have the most sort of vitality and energy through the years that you do have, and trying to optimize for those first.
Right. It's about the quality as opposed to the quality. Yeah.
To the quantity of age you're having. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'm 52, so like I'm, thinking.
She just turned 52, by the way.
Just turned 52.
Happy birthday.
But obviously, sort of in my language, I'm talking about, my friends are talking about that. Susie's 29, so it's like, in the way off distance. But what are the people that come, like men and women who come to the clinic, like, what is the reason I mean, is there something are they coming because they're like, okay, there's something wrong, or because they're my age and they figure they need to be doing something, or what exactly is the big motivation, like the thing that's, the initial push to come to you?
I think the actual thing that brings them through the clinic has a tendency to be different, but the story is often the same, which is like, they've been to their general practitioner or their like primary care provider, and they say, listen, I just don't feel like myself. I don't feel like I feel like I should feel better. And then, you get a series of tests, and those tests fall into like, there's no big red flags in this sort of big bell curve of the labs that they get. And so really when they're coming to us, it's usually because they're like, listen, I want to feel better, and I'd like to do that, and yet I haven't really found a way to do that on my own. Or you're like, trying to reach for these different random things, and you buy a supplement off of Instagram, and the next thing you go for like a cold plunge. There's no way to integrate it. And so I think that maybe it's body composition, maybe it's hormones, maybe it's just overall vitality and energy in the day to day. And then when they come through, the process then becomes like, okay, let's not just look at the labs. Let's look at, some of these other pieces that parse that out, like your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep. We look at hormones in depth. And then at the end of it, you come up with a much more concrete plan of things that you can do, none of which are going to make massive changes. There's no silver bullet or magic pill. But when you compound these things together, like one after the other, you can see some really, really impressive results. Yeah.
Okay.
I like what you said about the cold plunges because I find that obviously we're seeing it, especially in Toronto. I'm not sure you're in Calgary, correct?
Yeah.
So Toronto, it's ginormous. The trend right now of cold plunges and saunas.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. And I've done it once.
Ugh.
And so I'm from Edmonton. Okay. So I know the cold like no one else, like yourselves. And to do that for fun is insane to me. And I've done it and it's a lot. How well do these things, these trends actually make a difference? Like if I'm going to do a cold plunge every week and I'm like committing to that, is that actually going to help my longevity or just like feeling better? I know that people say they do, they sleep way better, but I'm like, cold equals death to me. Like saunas, I can get behind, no problem. But like, how much are these trends actually helping in terms of longevity?
I mean, listen, it's a hard question to answer because all of those things can be really good for a specific case. Okay, so I'll give you an example for sauna. Okay, sauna, we know from studies out of Finland, if you use sauna consistently 4 times a week, it can decrease your rate of heart attack and stroke by up to 52%. Okay, so that's like a massive change. You're not going to see that.
Wow.
In most other medications that you get that are looking for the same thing. But if your labs look amazing, you've never smoked, you exercise regularly, and you have no family history, like, is that the thing that you should be doing? Probably not, right? Similarly, like, cold plunges they do a lot for sort of resetting your autonomic nervous system, right? You hop into the cold water, you get that real shaking feeling, and then you come out of it and that resets. And for many patients, like you'll get much improved mood, you get more stamina. But if you have a cardiac condition where blood flow is really important, that's probably not the best choice for you, right? Because it kind of limits blood flow and things. So I think we have all of these different things, right? Supplements, hormones, technologies that we use in the clinic and outside. And they can all be really helpful, but if you're trying to sort of parse these things out on your own, they can be really challenging to figure out what actually is the right choice for you.
And yeah, that's very interesting. Is there a like you're talking about longevity, so we're assuming that people coming to see you are kind of my age or anywhere from 45 onwards. But in fact, do younger people come? Are they worried about it, or are really your clients mostly sort of?
And you look very young. Are you actually 65 and we should know something about what's going on here? Or
I'm Benjamin Button, in the flesh. Yeah. No, so listen, I'm 37. I think we have lots of patients who are coming through. The interesting thing is, even though the people that it helps the most are probably 50 plus, the people who are really interested and engaged with sort of maintaining their health have sort of caught this earlier wave. So when we started, we thought it would all be sort of patients 50 and 60 trying to reset things. And more is patients who are coming in who are sort of 35, 40, they see the horizon of how things have gone for maybe their grandparents or, some older parents or whomever. And they're trying to sort of get ahead of it before, those kind of diseases, dementia or, heart attack, stroke, whatever it may be, get them. And our primary care programming just really isn't set up to address those things as well as we'd like. So it ends up being kind of a spectrum. But yeah, more and more younger patients, I think, because there's just more and more information about the space.
Yeah. I mean, this is a different topic, but like, these young girls that we hear about like going to Sephora and doing like retinol at like 12 years old. And we're like, what the hell is going on? Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as horrible as that is, maybe it is a good thing that we're starting to think about how do we live a better and longer life in general for people like my age. We're like, maybe I shouldn't be smoking still, even though I'm still going out every Friday night. Like, maybe it is nice to do a cold plunge on a Saturday morning when I'm super hungover. Like, there's things that we're changing our mindset slowly but surely.
Baby steps.
I think it's Gen
steps. Thank you.
It's definitely generational because I think that's the irony is, my generational, but Gen X, shall we say, and Boomer or whatever, who should be worrying. We we just weren't educated to think about this stuff. So unless you're well informed and you follow, I don't know, like certain things on social media, or you take the time to research stuff, you don't do anything about it. Whereas younger people, they've seen it on social media, that it's like, as you said, there's so much information. So they're much better set up. Well, they'll be much better when they're 40 and 50, I
We'll
think.
see. I don't know. Maybe not.
Mm,
You
mm,
never know.
Yeah, it's a total generation thing, and at the same time, like as soon as you start getting into the program, making some of those small changes,
mm,
um, people see a little bit of results, right? So when we think of longevity, we really think of like, oh, I want to, live longer and be better, but ultimately it comes back to like how you're feeling today, right?
yeah.
So if you're trying to like, maybe your joints hurt, maybe you're trying to lose weight, maybe you're trying to just feel better. As soon as you start doing that, then it doesn't matter what age you're at, because you get a little bit of buy-in. That buy-in produces a little bit of results, and it can be a little bit of a self-propagating circle, which is, which is generational or not, can have like a huge impact on how the future looks for everybody.
And so let's get into the nitty gritty of these terms, because I don't think about these. No. And this is for me, and this is hopefully for our audience, because maybe I'm not the dumb one. But so like longevity, yes, we've talked about metabolic health, hormone therapy. Like, what do these terms really mean? And like with someone, like I'm a client coming in and I'm like, I want to work on all of these things. What is it really I'm doing? And how do I get to any kind of longevity goals from these things, if that makes any sense?
Yeah. So let's touch on metabolic health, because I think that's probably the biggest thing that impacts how you age. Okay. So really, your body has all of these processes within the cell that it's trying to perform. It's trying to make energy. It's trying to keep your DNA healthy. And the way it does that is it uses things like sugars and fats as an energy source to sort of allow those reactions to occur. Okay. As you get older, sometimes those reactions can become just a little bit disarrayed and a little bit broken. And so the end result of that is, you either need more energy, or, some of these other processes like DNA repair have a tendency to fall off. So metabolic health is really getting very granular, very specific about how your body is consuming things like sugars, how it's consuming things like fats, and trying to optimize those things so your cell is functioning as best as humanly possible. And the way that you do that is through a combination of like all of the things that we know from the lifestyle pieces. We know that it's important to eat right. We know that it's important to exercise. We know it's important to sleep. But what I think is really cool is as the longevity space continues to evolve, you don't just figure out like, what is generally good nutrition. You can get very specific about like, okay, my DNA says that I should be on a ketogenic diet, or look, my lab show that my sugars are running a little high. It's really important for me to do a fasting protocol. And that's why the having such an individualized sort of crafted approach is so important. Make sense? So sorry, there's a lot of information
that makes
there.
a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about fasting, because that's such a buzz thing. Everyone's going on about intermittent fasting, and some people it seems to really work for, and others it doesn't. And that's the point, isn't it? It's not generic. I mean, it's being sold that way, but it's actually everybody's different. And some people also need to eat in the morning because they've low blood sugar or whatever it is, that it can't work for everyone. But why do, like, all these trends, like we sort of generalize it? It's just stupid, isn't it?
And as a great example, look, if let's say you have, you need something called insulin to help take sugar and drive it into the cell. Okay. So from like, and over time, if you have too much sugar or you kind of genetically predisposed to it, your sugar levels sort of gradually creep up. Fasting is a great way where you have sort of a period of elimination where you don't have any sugar in your bloodstream. Your body begins to readjust to that, to insulin, which is really important for longevity. But if you're a 45-year-old woman, right, and your insulin levels are fine, prolonged periods of fasting of like 12 or 18 hours can actually have pretty important impacts on your hormone levels, like on
Yeah.
your testosterone and estrogen. So it ends up being very specific to the individual and kind of what their outcomes are looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to really talk about something that we don't really get to talk about a lot on this podcast, which is men's health, because
Yeah.
we are not the experts, unfortunately.
Sure.
We do not have any male genitalia. So
Really?
as long as I know, as far as I know now. But so I deal with a lot of older, in quotes, like male clients. That's who I kind of hang out with a lot. And that's why, they're nice, they're older, they have these hopes and dreams of staying young forever and having testosterone high as they can be for as long as it can. I have a lot of those clients and friends who are in their maybe like mid 50s, late 40s, early 60s that are really trying to keep, staying young and fit and healthy for as long as they can. And a lot of them look amazing. And when they do these things, like doing stuff with their longevity, you can tell the difference. But when is it like what helps the most and what helps the least for that? Is it just like working out, exercising, eating well for guys and like not drinking as much? Or do they have to do these like testosterone shots and all these other things? Like what's the real importance, and is it all important?
And what does it do?
What does it do?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Loaded question. Let's get to it.
Hugely loaded question. Take your time.
Okay. So, look, there's two pieces to this pie. Okay. The first one is testosterone does not exist in isolation. Okay. It's impacted by your stress and your cortisol levels. That can suppress it. It's impacted by your insulin. So if you're carrying extra weight and you have sort of high levels of insulin, you're going to end up with lower levels of testosterone. And it can also be impacted by sort of a variety of other sort of soft hormones that are related to lifestyle. So if you're not eating right and you're working 12 hours a day, you're sleeping poorly and you're drinking all the time, yeah, of course your testosterone is going to be low. And fixing those things can have a really profound impact on what the testosterone levels are of any male at any point. Okay, so that's part A. Part B is after the age of 35 or 40, you do start to lose like 1 to 2% of your testosterone every year. Your testes just don't make as much. Okay, so and when that happens, like replacing testosterone can be really beneficial in terms of trying to get it back to like this sort of healthy set point. I think where people run into trouble is they think it has to be either all one or the other, right? They're like, I'm going to fix everything about my lifestyle and that's going to sort of make me feel better. And for many guys, that's enough. Or they're like, I'm not going to do any of the lifestyle pieces. Just give me as much tea as possible. Bring me right up to the brim and that's going to fix all my problems. And the truth is like, neither of those are particularly good solutions. You need to be able to look at the lifestyle piece. And then you also need to be able to like judiciously use testosterone to help sort of replace your levels to where you were in your 20s or 30s. And testosterone has like a ton of benefits, right? We think about it in terms of muscle mass. It's really important for sexual health and libido and erections. But it's also really important for things like cognition. Right? So concentration and mood in men often improves. Their motivation improves. So it ends up being this like very sort of cyclical approach. And if you attack both of them, you can get some pretty impressive outcomes.
So, I mean, obviously we hear a lot more about, or we do, and I certainly know a lot more about HRT for women and understand that. And obviously in the mainstream media, we're talking a lot more about menopause. Thank God, finally. And perimenopause, there's a bit more understanding. I still don't think there's an awful lot of empathy or sympathy from a lot of medical professionals, shall we say. But I don't think as women or even men, we talk about the male side of it, really.
Totally.
Like, I don't think any men I know talk about testosterone therapy. But
HRT is hormone replacement therapy for those
women.
people.
Yeah, so it's to replace your estrogen levels. But like for men, I mean, I guess men don't talk about health anyway, and they're not very good at going to the doctor. In my experience, and sort of pretending everything's okay when it's not. So there's a difference there, I think, between men and women. But like HRT, to me, I get it as a woman. Like why women take it, after, during menopause. So when, they've got all sorts of issues and it's going to help. And I totally understand that. I just I don't think we fully understand what the testosterone therapy, like, is it absolutely necessary?
Is it when guys can't get hard?
Yeah.
Like,
Is it all sexual?
Yeah, sure.
Is
Yeah,
it all
okay.
sexual? Yeah. Is it libido?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, totally. So, okay, a few things. Number one is just to backtrack a minute. The reason that the big difference between men and women as they engage with the healthcare system, right?
Mhm.
Women need to have consistent follow-up, for pap screening and
Yeah.
they have much more, and then pregnancy, if you decide to do that, like they have much more points of contact.
Mhm.
And it's way more accepted within the culture to like have those conversations with each other, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas men, they don't really have any, like they have neither the communication with each other or the experience. So they show up at the door at 50 when something's going wrong, and they have no way of like expressing that conversation.
Mhm.
So when we're talking about testosterone and it comes to like libido and sexual health, it is massively important. Like, there was a study that was looking at men, I think it was over 50, that said 57% of men either have a hard time getting or maintaining an erection. Right?
Mhm.
It's like over half, right? And if you like, of course, no one ever hears that stat. Men don't talk about it with each other. They don't talk about it with their doctor. And so it goes on as this like perpetual issue that just sort of caught along. Testosterone can have a huge impact on sexual health, right? So in the short term, it can improve libido, right? Guys wanting to have sex.
Mm.
It can also really improve like the strength and duration of erections and sort of give more pleasure that way. And it has a whole bunch of metabolic benefits from strength and bone health and how they sort of metabolize sugars and insulin, those kind of things that we're talking about. But even if we're just looking at the sexual health lens, right?
Mhm.
Men who have more sex, or even have like, even if it's just sort of more orgasms, period,
Mm.
improvement in how long they can live and how well they live by comparison to men who have sex less, decreased risk of prostate cancer,
Yeah.
improved cardiovascular outcomes. So we kind of think about these things as just being like a taboo thing, and like, oh, you just want T to sort of look better. It's like, no, those are critical pieces to actually feel better today and set you up for success 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the men conversation is often it's sort of shrouded in shame, like the sexual health thing. I mean, you're not going to tell your friends you can't, it's not working down there, or you're not feeling it. That's a problem. I think most men, it's their partners who make them go to the doctor. Like my husband will never go to the doctor if I didn't make the appointments. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd literally go every 20 years. So, I just make the appointment and tell him to go. So men just don't go. And I think the sexual health piece, from my point of view, from, being in my age group, people, friends and so on, I think there's a real misunderstanding amongst men between libido, like their libido being low, and actually their libido not being low, but it not functioning, like they can't get an erection. So there's a real misunderstanding there, I think. So there are a lot of men whose libido is low and they just kind of go, okay, well, and they just sort of turn into these asexual beings from what I can see. They just sort of brush it under the carpet, don't deal with it. And then that creates all sorts of other problems, doesn't it? Like mental health in general, not to mention their relationships, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of, no, I have the desire, but because of medication, because of a health problem, blood pressure, whatever it is, I can't get an erection. And because they don't want to talk about it, they end up not doing anything about it. I think from what the conversations I've had.
Yeah, and
Many
or
men.
or they don't even know where to turn or what the
Right.
options are, and like
Right.
so. So let me just dive into a few of those pieces. Libido,
Mhm.
feeling like you want to have sex. That's There's two components to that, right?
Mhm.
There's top half of the body, how your brain is functioning. Are you stressed? Are you overtired? Like all of those sort of lifestyle things that we were talking about. And then there's like the hormonal piece. And for men, testosterone is a huge component to making sure that they want to feel like having sex. This is very different from women, right? Women,
Mhm.
there's a hormonal component as well, but a lot of it is, sort of above the belt, right? And in terms of like making sure the mood and the set is correct. So libido is one thing. Erections are a different beast. Like erections are really a combination of needing hormones, and then also needing good blood flow to the penis, right? And as you get older, the blood vessels everywhere, but to the penis especially, are like they can get a little worn, a little frayed. They don't respond as well. And so then, you talk about medications like, I'll use Cialis as a good example, or tadalafil. There's a big study that was looking at men who use that on a daily basis versus men who don't, who had ED, erectile dysfunction. And what they found is the men who are using it daily, which is one of the ways you can use it, actually had like a 19% decrease in mortality over like a fairly short term, like 3.5 years.
Wow.
And because, it increases blood flow to the penis, but it also increases blood flow everywhere else to the heart. It improves cardiac motility, stuff like that. So what I think is so interesting about sexual health is, number one, there's tons of stigma from it from the medical perspective. People are still conventional care is just beginning to wrap their head around using things like testosterone and Cialis in a more consistent manner. But kind of as a public service announcement to your listeners, like those two drugs, testosterone and Cialis, can be, when used appropriately, really good to improve your sexual function. But also generally really good to improve like your health span, like both sexually and otherwise. And there's tons of other options that you can go down the pipeline that I'm happy to chat about. But those two things alone, I think, that can make a massive difference to how men feel. And then, that has a waterfall effect on their relationships and their mental health and all that things. So all those things coupled together.
That's amazing. Is Cialis and Viagra the same thing?
Oh, they're like sister drugs. So, Viagra is probably the original version, sildenafil, and then Cialis is the newer version. Both of them work by essentially, blocking a receptor that allows your blood vessels to open a little bit faster, which you need. You need good blood flow to the penis to get an erection.
Yeah. But do you surely part of the battle though for you as a clinic is getting these men to come through the doors, to actually come visit you, like to sort of go, okay, I'm gonna have to talk about this and it's embarrassing and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
are men still embarrassed?
Yeah,
like, or are they excited to?
I'm talking older men.
Yeah.
So the funny thing about that is really twofold. Number one is, to your point, I would say half of the men who come through are referred because their wives have had a good experience in the clinic, and
the wives.
Always
When they're later, boys.
Yeah. And then the second thing that comes through is that the men, when they do come in, like at this point, I just ask like very pointedly, like, so how's everything functioning? And they'll be like, well, it's okay, or like they'll leave it to the end of the conversation to have those points of connection. But the truth is, it's like it's so prominent, and it's such an important part of your health. I feel like there has to be a wave of people who are going to sort of push that envelope forward, and my hope is as we continue to sort of bang the drum on this, that more and more men will feel comfortable that, like, this isn't some loss of your masculinity. This is actually, what you need to do to get full health and wellness. And then the last part of that I'll say is maybe a third or a quarter of our patients will come in and like, all they want, they're like, just give me the tea. Like, I just want as much testosterone as you possibly can.
Wow.
And you're like, well, there's a few other things we should look at in addition to that. So yeah, it's usually the versions.
I think it's interesting what you said about loss of manhood, because I think with women, we sort of accept in our life that our libidos will go up and down because, children and, all the things that are affecting your hormones. And so it's more in our conversation. Whereas men, it's such a source of like, well, what do you mean? Like, there's something, your manhood, it's like all about your manhood, but it's actually not true. It could be so many things.
Yeah. I think
It's
it's
not
also
like
because
personal.
it's like they can always have children, where us, we have to really focus on when are we going to do it?
Getting
How
it
are we going
done.
to do it? Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. When they're just like blowing their loads everywhere,
Thanks,
they don't
Susie. Yeah,
care.
thanks a
If
lot.
they could do it, why not
that's
do
true.
it?
That's true.
So no, I feel like men are just unbelievable. You lucky dogs, you. Like if I could be doing that, I would. But no. So men. On the women's side, let's just get into a little bit of the women, because you still deal with women and men, correct?
Oh, yeah,
for yourself,
for sure.
Yeah. So when women, are you seeing the same issues with women and men? Obviously, different genitalia, but like, is it loss of libido, longevity, as in like they want their skin to look amazing? Like, is there similarities? Is there like a whole bunch of differences? What do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, okay. We are seeing some of the similarities, right? The similarities are libidos change. Maybe they're not quite feeling themselves. I think the difference is for women, because they have more sex hormones to deal with generally and replace. It ends up just being a little bit more complex. From of course, when women come in perimenopause, we want to look at their progesterone. That's the first thing that drops off. And then as they enter into menopause, you really want to make sure that you're maintaining a healthy estrogen level. But again, like the one hormone that nobody's talking about, which is the most commonly available hormone in sex hormone in women, is testosterone as well. And just like men, you see this like gradual stepwise decline of those hormones. And replacing that can have a huge impact in terms of kind of some of the similar things: cognition, libido, right? Like that, those two things have a tendency to really crop up over time. Body composition changes, things like that, which, most women are excited about. And then just like men on the sexual dysfunction side, as women get older, their blood flow isn't as good as well. Right.
Yeah.
And so what you end up with is like, if you think about, the vulva and the clitoris and how important those are for stimulation and climax, there's also this drop off in women in terms of what they can achieve in terms of sexual satisfaction. And so replacing some of those hormones can have a huge impact on that. And then there's other therapies from, laser therapy to ultrasound therapy that can help sort of bring blood flow back to those areas, both for men and women.
Wow.
That can have a huge difference. So, yeah.
Sharing My Truth Pod is so excited to partner with Vibrator.com, where the A in vibrator is the number 8. This is an extremely exclusive code where no other podcast has it. If you go to Vibrator.com right now, use the code MS15, that's MS15 at Vibrator.com. You can now get 15% off anything in store. That's any sex toys for you, your partner, your neighbor, your mom. We don't judge. We don't care. Get it now. Go to the link in our bio, put in the code, and get jiggy with it.
Yeah. So here's what I would say. Just like men, you have two different changes. Number one is women have this gradual decrease in testosterone that happens over time. That does impact things like libido. Also is really important for climax. That's an important hormone to have for that. And at the same time, just like as men need good blood flow to their penis to actually have, to like get an erection, women have those same issues, right? So, your vulva, your clitoris, those things need good blood flow in order to like achieve the results that you're looking for. And a big part, like I think it's actually a massive part of health optimization, longevity, because it like permeates all these different things like sexual satisfaction, intimacy with a partner, all of those things sort of play on top of each other. And yes, there's like there's the mind body connection that's really important, and certainly something we focus on. But also, like the mechanics need to be working. And so for women, that means replacing things like estrogen and testosterone, because when you don't have those two hormones, you end up with vaginal dryness, you end up with increasing pain with intercourse, and you end up with decreasing number of like pleasurable experiences, either like reaching climax or even coming close to that. And so like the mechanics piece, there's so much that can be done in terms of hormone replacement that I think is incredibly important, that is again really hasn't been addressed properly by like our primary care providers, because they have such a wealth of things that they're trying to sort of consume and incorporate. And then again, from the vascular health perspective, there's lots of things, both medications that you can take, and other sort of treatments that you can get to sort of improve that blood flow. And so if you do a combination of those things, especially if you and your partner are doing them together, like I think you kind of set yourself up for success coming, down the pike. So.
And then, so if, like for our pregnant friends or the women who have just had babies and they're feeling a little bit, obviously, like less than youthful, especially down there, less than youthful.
I'm going to use that.
Yep.
Is there like, what are the best, I don't know, medications or even just like therapies to do for your vulva or anything like that when you've had a trauma like childbirth?
Totally. I mean, there's two parts to it. There's the muscular pelvic floor, right? Those are the things like Kegels. Those are physio. They even have different machines that can sort of help things contract, like Emsella. It's a really common one. Like that's a brand name, but it essentially improves vascular blood flow and causes tightening, which is important. And then also like there's the massive hormone shifts that you see in both like post pregnancy and also entering into menopause, which is your progesterone tanks, your estrogen goes quite low, and so there's this imbalance. And you're talking about how people feel, right? And how they don't feel quite like themselves. But the other truth is when you don't have those hormones like estrogen is really important for neurotransmitter production. So, how your brain creates serotonin and norepinephrine, which are really important for maintaining mental health. And so when women are like in the postpartum phase or like the initiation of menopausal phase and their estrogen drops, it's a really common time to have postpartum depression and menopausal depression, which is like 100% can be attributed to those hormonal pieces. And so you end up with like this combination where, women often are just focusing on like, they want to get the mechanics back. They want to get their pelvic floor back. They want to make sure that things are comfortable. And yeah, there's lots of things that can be done from that, from a physio perspective. Again, there's lots of things. There's lots of lasers and techniques that can be done to improve the pelvic floor. But also, there's a broader sense of like, you got to get your hormones checked and you got to get them in balance, because those can cause massive shifts to how women feel during those times.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so interesting what you're saying, like talking about sexual health or all of these pieces. Is the problem, I think, is that you have to be a very good advocate for yourself, particularly within this kind of universal health care system where, they just don't have time for you. And things like sexual health, things like pain and the genital area or whatever it is, I don't think they prioritize that much, because there's really, as far as they're concerned, bigger things to deal with. But of course, like you said, it has such an effect on your mental health, on the way you feel about yourself. If your sex life isn't good, it can affect your mental health. It can affect the way your relation. I mean, it can affect everything, can't it? But it's like, it's not an important piece. And unless you as a patient advocate for yourself within the system, or come to, a clinic like yours, where obviously you've got the ability to pay for it, it's kind of difficult, isn't it? Like,
Oh,
You have to be
man.
good at that.
Yeah, and our healthcare system is really good. It's actually exceptionally good. Canada's
It
healthcare
is.
system
Yeah.
for when you are sick and you need anything to help sort of support you out of that illness,
Mm.
it's really top notch. But if you're trying to prevent that from happening, or you're trying to take yourself from like, a 6 or a 7 out of 10 up to in terms of feeling like an 8 or a 9,
Mm.
foundationally, it's just not equipped to do that. And
No.
so, what I hope our clinic can help to do is sort of bridge the gap between those two worlds a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely what it can do, because it's sort of more of the system's reactive, like you said, as opposed to proactive. And unless you go and do your own research, and when I go to my GP, I have like 1,000 questions, and I look like a real nerd. I like have it on my phone. I'm just wait till I go through all the questions, because otherwise they just want to shoo you off. And I do understand it. They just have too many people, too much going on. Some people have got really, really serious life-threatening things, and they don't have time. So unless you can get through your questions quick, but I just think there needs to be more understanding, like the expectations amongst us of what the system can do are far too high. So the people who come to a clinic like yours have understood it's good for that, but not for this other piece. And I think more people, in my opinion, need to understand that. Their expectations of a state healthcare system, like any country in the world, they're just too high. You can't deal with that.
Yeah, and I want to the other hard thing is, like, if you're a family physician, the amount of knowledge that you need to have
Right.
over all of these different lanes is insane. Like they're
Yeah.
brilliant,
Agreed. Yeah.
but they're like, then when if you get into more things, they're like, oh, I'm having some vaginal dryness, or it's a little bit
Yeah.
painful. Like their knowledge and understanding in those specific areas, it would be unreasonable to expect them to know everything. And so then you do have to be your own advocate, and that's hard to do, like we were talking about before, because there's like this panacea of information that you're trying to consume, and it's hard to figure out what's what.
Right. And you have to be the right kind of person, like somebody who can be sort of proactive and advocate for yourself. And we're not all like that, are we? So that presents problems. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
And well, so you are a part of what's called the the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly? And what are the like anti-aging advancements to look forward to / that we have now? What
Yeah,
should
sure.
Mel and I be doing to look 20 years younger? I want to look like a literal child. Like, what do I need to be doing?
For me. But
No.
Listen, I think like there's really a couple key advancements that I think are really exciting. Okay. So the first one, which I'll call the most boring of the three, is like just getting the information of what your individual body needs to feel its best and look its best in stuff we're already doing. Right. So knowing like exactly what supplements you need, at what dose for your DNA, that's already here. Which medications are best for your mental and physical health, that information is already here. It just isn't well disseminated yet. And so like from a lifestyle perspective, that's powerful, right? Because then you know exactly what you need to do to like attain the best outcomes, right? The second one is what I'd call, like, from the medication perspective, is off-label use of these medications. So medicine's a slow-moving beast. We're beginning to think of these medications as more than just what their indication is. And we're beginning to think of them, okay, do they have more profound effects on longevity overall? So we talked about testosterone. We talked about Cialis. Those medications, their indication is not to help you live a long, healthy life, but we're now doing research that helps us guide us in that direction to find that answer. And that's really important, because there's some of these medications that are coming out that address metabolic health, that address sort of other pieces of health on a very cellular level that I think are going to have really important impacts for longevity. So that's number two, and I could go down that road forever, because it's kind of where we're spending most of the time. And there's billions of dollars of research in that field alone. And then the last piece, which is like just crazy, is where the research is in terms of like cellular regeneration. We think of all of these things for how to maintain your health, not just from like prevention of disease, but actually how to keep your cells healthy on a long-term basis. And there's medications that are now in trial that are looking at like, how do we keep our cells youthful? And as you begin to work through those, I mean, the different types of gene therapies and injections and stem cells that are going to be available in 5, 10, 15 years from now is going to really change the landscape of what healthy living looks like today. And again, it's going to really set us all up for some unique and exciting opportunities coming down the pike.
Exciting.
So like, what am I going to do? Put like stem cells in my face, and then I'm going to just like get rid of any flaw.
Yeah. So not only that, they'll actually take it one step further, and they'll draw your blood off, okay, or pull some hairs, and you end up with these cells that are called pluripotent cells. So cells that are mostly capable of transforming to other cells. Then they spin those things down. So you end up, you know how like right now they might do PRP, and it might have like...
I was literally going to ask you about PRP. I'm so happy you brought it up because I feel like a lot of men are doing PRP. And can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So where we're at right now in terms of like the longevity, skin health, also good for sexual injections as well for men and women, is essentially they'll take your blood and they will spin off the blood to the different components. And as you kind of spin them off, they kind of filter out like different layers in a tube. And the layer that has the most proteins and growth factor, and then they sort of draw out of a syringe and they re-inject into either your hair or your face or your penis or whatever. And that's supposed to that actually like is supposed to stimulate healthy cells to grow in that area. Okay. But that doesn't actually have any of the cells that you need in that area. All it has is the growth factors, like the stuff that would be, if you drew out a vial of blood, anything that's not a red blood cell that you can spin out is kind of what you're left with. But really, if you have cells themselves that can divide on their own, like specific for you. So you take a couple hair follicles, you take the cells out that are the healthiest cells and capable of dividing. You send them to, there's actually a place in Toronto called Aeon that's doing this now. You send them to there, they then replicate them on their own. And then what you're left with when you're injecting back into your skin or into your face, or this is going to be a massive area of growth as time goes on. You're going to be able to inject healthy cells that are specific for you, that are your cells. So there's no like risk of, there's no major risk of like, fighting them off or them sort of dying when they get there. And those are going to have really important impacts to skin regrowth, hair regrowth, and sexual health regrowth. So yeah, I think that stuff it feels kind of sci-fi in terms of like where it's at, but it's not nearly as far off as people think it is.
Can you just explain a little bit more about the sexual health growth? Because that's confusing. I get it. Like you put it in your skin, like in your hairline, you might grow hair, right?
Yeah.
If you put it in your penis, what is that going to do? Make you harder? Like what does that?
Yeah,
what does that mean?
Yeah, good question. So essentially, what you do, like right now, they're doing it with PRP, right? So you take these growth factors, you inject them into the penis, you cause a little bit of micro trauma, and it helps with vascular blood flow. It helps to regenerate blood vessels with new healthy cells that can line the vascular bed. Okay, I think where it's going to go in the future is stem cells we already know stem cells are really good from an inflammatory perspective, but like the other thing that you need is healthy structure of your tissue, of your penis. So it helps with collagen regrowth, helps with like support of like the matrix just around the penis as well. And some of those things that are just at the, just are feel, I think, a little bit like very futuristic now. Like, okay, you're going to stick stem cells in my, in my penis, and what's that going to look like? The hardest part that we have right now is we don't know how to tell those stem cells what they need to grow into. Do you need to be a hair cell? Do you need to be a skin cell? Do you need to be some sort of like vascular cell? As those issues get addressed and managed, we're going to be getting way more specific in terms of how to grow healthy tissue where, maybe tissue previously wasn't as healthy. So instead of having like an 85-year-old vascular blood vessel cell in your penis, now you're injecting something that's substantially healthier. And as soon as we can kind of figure out how to tell those cells where to go and what to grow into, it's going to be a really interesting step forward in medicine.
So exciting.
Wow, that does sound wild.
Yeah.
That is so exciting. Because I feel like a lot of, and what also we haven't really spoke about except for PRP is like a lot of men are embarrassed and like don't want to talk about like their hair falling out, right? Or not growing back.
For sure.
And I think that's obviously sad. And obviously women deal with stuff like that, if not the same thing, right? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, it's very exciting.
I mean, it's just, I don't know, sort of speechless. There's so much that can be done.
So,
I hope it's a good thing. I hope it'll be there by the time I'm like 55, 60.
Sweetie, you're going to look like 18 now. You're going to be 60.
18.
But here's the thing that I would say, which is like, we have the great hope that these medical advancements take us from where we are today to the very next level in this very futuristic sort of approach. I mean, the reality is there is a ton of things, from lifestyle to supplements to hormone replacement to the off-label use of medications that we already have, that can make a massive, massive change to how you're feeling today and what sets you up for the future. So by the time these sort of futuristic medications come to be, you're already in a spot where you're sort of at your optimal level. And then when they come in, you can actually utilize them to the best of your availability.
Yeah, it can actually really work. Yeah. But stuff like supplements, I mean, there's so much. I mean, I take a whole bunch of supplements. I think I know what I'm doing, but probably not. But and I think it makes me feel better. Yeah. But like, is there a dangerous, like, obviously they're available. There's so much stuff.
Well, not just supplements, but like Botox, obviously. Like, we're doing all this skincare stuff that's like medical, but also like we go overboard because doctors allow us to. Like, yeah, where is the line between supplements and then more medical procedures, if you will?
Yeah. So I have two thoughts on that. So number one is we use evidence-based, quality-controlled supplements at the clinic all the time. They are just like a medication. They are a molecule that we're looking to achieve a result with. And if you know what your goal is and you have a clear idea of what supplements do that, they can be really effective. I think the two things that have given supplements a bad name is, like, number one, 10, 20 years ago, we had no research, right? Everyone's just taking supplements, a handful of vitamin C, and they're sick, like hoping for the best. There was no.
Oh my God, that's literally me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You're like, I'll do it. It can't hurt. So that's part of it. And then the other thing is the quality of supplements. It's not like medicine. Like, there is very little control from Health Canada in terms of like what supplements have in them, where they were sourced, stuff like that. So getting quality supplements is a really big piece. And then transitioning that to the other topic around like Botox and filler and like the other medical component of it is like, I think it's important for oftentimes when patients are coming in, right? If you're doing all of these things around your lifestyle and you're eating right, I think it's totally reasonable to want to like look and feel your best. But in the same breath, I also think that a lot of those things that you can do from the inside out, so like, making sure that your omegas and your B vitamins, those are impactful for like hair and skin. Having a healthy amount of estrogen, really important for skin. Collagen, fiber, those things all relate. And then I think there's probably a bit of a shift now towards like more things that can help with your skin from the inside out. So there's like, one of the hot supplements is called Nishido, I think it's Nishido Time, and it's like a supplement that's supposed to help with your skin by providing your skin and your body with the energy it needs to keep a really healthy skin in check. And so I think there's also like this wave of not just trying to do as much externally, but try and fix some of these things from the ground up.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also, as you get older, like a line, like I certainly think like you kind of like, you have to know what you're trying to achieve. And, if you're 52, you're not going to look like a 25-year-old. You sort of have to get over yourself. And, you have to want to be healthy and look the best that you can look, but not trying and achieve something that's not attainable, which I think a lot of people are in that gray space.
For sure. I think it comes down to personal preference and being in the hands of someone that you trust to try and make those calls,
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So much information.
I know.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, like, thank you so much again for coming on the pod. Really such a treat to have you and your huge amount of knowledge about anti-aging and all this good stuff. We always have one last question to our guests who come on our podcast, and it is, in the spirit of sharing truths, what truth would you share with your younger self? And, this could be within anti-aging or something completely different that you want to share with them.
Yeah. It's a great question. I will stick with the anti-aging theme, which is like, I think when I was like, one of the things I've really learned from my patients who have come through is like, health optimization is it's kind of you're playing it for the long game, right? I see these patients come through and everyone's frustrated because in the first 6 weeks they haven't seen the results that they're looking for, and if you give it enough time, the things that you do compound. And so I think if I were to say one thing to my younger self, it would probably be like, have a little bit more patience and and perhaps be a little bit more forgiving of like when you sort of fall off the bandwagon, because it's a long-term game. And I think I've probably learned that more lately than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
that.
That's good. That's very good.
And also, I feel like maybe you feel like this too. You're 37, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
honestly,
young.
So young. Skin's amazing. That like I feel like I look better. Like maybe it's just because I'm more confident or something. But when I was like 23. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We get older, we get hotter. It's just the way it's gonna be.
Okay.
Hey,
You say so.
Yeah. Keep living it. Yeah, it's great.
It's a mindset.
It's in your mind.
It's a mindset.
Yeah. Hey.
Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Bastian. Is it Dr. Bastian?
Yeah, it's Dr. Bastian. Yeah.
I was like, are we French?
Yeah, I wish.
Thank you so much again. It was literally such a pleasure. If any of our lovely listeners have any questions for Dr. Jonathan Bastian, we would welcome those, and we will hopefully even have you on the pod again. It was such a pleasure, and we can answer some of those questions. But yeah, thank you again.
Thank you so much for your time.
We will talk to you soon.
We will be in touch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to be on.
Awesome. Thank you
you
so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.
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 Thanks so much for listening. Please rate and review this podcast and follow us on social at Sharing My Truth Pod, and leave us a voicemail on our website, sharingmytruth.com, to share your stories and experiences with us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.